All right, folks, take a look at these pictures, and I want you to try to discern which one of these guys you would hire to watch or even tutor your children. We asked some people taking the CNN tour that question.
I would pick this gentleman as a tutor or a nanny.
I would have hired Chris.
I would also pick the same person.
This man did not seem to have a whole lot of distinct things listed on his resume.
I would hire Chris.
He just seems to be more detailed, and he was doing detailed plans and reporting back to me and able to work with different types of students.
He had the most professionally put together resume.
The CPR is a big thing for me.
I think I would hire Chris Smith. There was a lot more detail about what he can do.
I would hire Eric.
I think we'd hire Eric.
He's a teacher. I'm a teacher. He's got a pretty solid background. And when you can manage a lot of kids, you can manage one.
He seems to have more background in dealing with kids.
I have 4 kids myself, so being able to juggle that many kids would be important for somebody that we would hire.
I would probably pick Eric, but what's most impressive is him actually volunteering at the homeless shelter.
Okay, so quick resume check for you there again. Danny, first of all, has extensive babysitting experience, 5 years. Eric, Ivy League educated, taught in the D.C. public schools, volunteered in homeless shelter daycare. And then Chris, he's owned a daycare for 2 years, certified in CPR, certified homeschool teacher. So, you saw the pictures. We showed you their resumes. Judge, who would you hire?
Well, you know what? I would not hire a man to watch over my children, period.
Wow.
When I think of rapists, when I think of pedophiles, when I think of sadomasochists, when I think of psychopaths, I think of men. So I would not hire a man to take care of my child. I'm not discriminating against men.
Yes, you are.
But when you go into the jailhouse and you look at who the rapists are, bring me the woman up who was charged with rape. So the first thing is we're always pointing fingers, but one thing my daddy always said is when you're pointing finger, guess what? That thumb is pointing back at you. This show is called Raising America. We have an obligation to protect our children. What I read about this last guy here, the Cornell graduate, he was offering free babysitting jobs. Why would I have a man in my house watching my 2-year-old daughter because it's free? He lived with another family for several weeks that had young children.
All right, now Bert obviously took offense to...
Where do we start with
He's
that?
like, well, wait a minute, I can babysit. I'm a guy, I'm a dad.
You know, I mean, more and more we see in the news now of teachers, female teachers with their male students.
I was going to say that too.
I'm sure we don't have enough time for all that.
Right, we don't, but just to be balanced.
All right, Danny, to me, didn't have enough experience. Eric, the Ivy League guy, my wife and I don't want somebody in our house that's that smart. Because he went to Cornell or something. Yes. So I'm going to go with Chris. Looked like he really had it together. Experienced, a lot of work with children, so I'm probably going with Chris also.
All right, I want to tell you, about half of these people picked number 2, Eric. Good choice, right? He's Ivy League material, went to Cornell High School before, finishing up at Purdue. Former teacher coming up. We're going to tell you which one of these guys is the one. Who would you hire to watch or tutor your children? And of these 3 guys, remember that guy, Eric, there, was chosen above anybody else amongst the people that we asked. Great credentials. But Eric Justin Toth there is on the FBI's most wanted list for having child porn. The feds say pornographic images were found on a school camera that belonged to him. There's a $100,000 reward to bring him in. And they're still looking for him, so please take a good look at your picture, because we're not just doing how do you decide who to have your kids watch. We want to make sure that we, if we can, help bring this guy in. He does have some connections, I should say, obviously, as you heard there, to D.C., Chicago, and could advertise online as a tutor or a male nanny. Now, I want to bring Natoya Green in here. She's a family law attorney. She's also a mom of triplets. So, Natoya, if you're trying to find a nanny, other than Googling them, I mean, what basics do we need to know? And really, Googling is not the way to go, is it?
Well, according to the judge, it has to have a vagina.
Okay, then. I know, Bert is still really hung up on the fact that, I know the judge was not happy with guys watching. But in her defense, I think a lot of parents out there might say, my first choice would be a female because of the maternal instincts. But you help tell us, Natoya, what should we be looking for? How do we find the right material?
I think regardless of who the candidate is, the very first step is running a thorough background check. I think that parents need to do this irrespective of who referred you to this person, what they look like, how they seem, and even their resume. And a thorough background check is going to include the person's full name, date of birth, full address, and social security number.
Okay, good to know. Judge Karen, I know these folks who are most wanted fugitives don't necessarily fit the profile of most bad guys, do they?
Well, you know, the thing is that they're wolves in sheep's clothing. Just because you went to Harvard doesn't mean you're not an abusive person, that you don't have psychological issues, because you don't have to take a psychological exam to get into college. You just have to be a straight-A student to get into an Ivy League school. So I think that what you need to tell your viewers about this guy is that he has a big mole underneath his eye. He's extremely tall. I think he's 6'3", and he's very thin, so we need to look out for him. You know, it's not going to be the boogeyman in the dark. It's going to be these people who have a straight-laced, all-American look. Think about Ted Bundy. I mean, he had a law degree, but, I mean, he was abducting and killing women. I think we have an obligation to protect our children. I'm not dumping on men, but there are a lot more men in jail for harming women sexually, hurting children sexually, than there are ever women in jail for that. So my point to you as a parent is, yeah, maybe Mr. John Doe, whatever his name is a great guy. You think he's got great credentials. If you don't mind having him with your children, you better make sure you know who you're leaving your children with, because the ultimate obligation is yours.
Natoya, one more time. 3 things that we should do, not just look for, but do before hiring a nanny or someone to work with our kids.
Certainly have the thorough background check. I think also that parents need to be responsible in checking references themselves. Quite often, previous employers did not do background checks themselves, and oftentimes parents go based on what some other employer said. I think also parents need to go with their instincts and not according to a person's resume, whether they look very nice or they went to an Ivy League school. I think if something doesn't feel right about a candidate, then you should trust that instinct.